Alright, so this is my introduction to Michael Myers masks for the complete noob. My name is Nick. This is my first video covering Michael Myers content. If you go back and look at any of my other videos, I'm mostly covering Ghostbusters. I've been prop building for a long time. I started out kind of the same way a lot of people did. Modifying toys, painting up toys to look like props, and then moved into 3D printing, then started kind of building on my technical knowledge, building up my tools, and eventually I ended up on a side quest on Michael Myers masks. So I'm still relatively new to the Michael Myers mask hobby, but I do have a pretty extensive background otherwise, going back several years. When I usually introduce myself in YouTube videos, I do everything in one take. I don't edit videos. I don't have ambitions of being a YouTuber. That's not the purpose of this video. I made a similar video in the 3D printed Ghostbusters prop Facebook group. Basically, the purpose of this is because I wished when I started there was like a 101 video. Because there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of different sources to find that information. It can be difficult to find if you don't know what you're looking for. So this video is just meant to serve as a 101 for people getting into collecting Michael Myers masks. Possibly, maybe you want to rehaul Michael Myers masks. Maybe you just want to get into the buy-sell trade aspect. Maybe you're not interested in actually doing the work. You just want to have some nice stuff and know where to look and what to get. So pretty much the big intro, the thing to cover first is going to be Trick or Treat Studios. Trick or Treat Studios probably has the most accessible masks. They're all very good sculpts. I want to say most, if not all, of the Michael Myers masks are credited to Justin Mabry. They're excellent sculpts, but they are mass produced. So when you go to Spirit Halloween and pick them up, they might not look so great. The hairlines look pretty jacked. The paint jobs are incredibly basic. A lot of times the eye cuts are a little bit off. That being said, that's from the mass production process. It doesn't actually mean it's a bad mask. It means it was bad manufacturing of the mask. The original sculpts used to make those masks are actually phenomenal, and you will not find better quality at a less than a $100 price point anywhere. Once you get into independent sellers like Nicholas Art Galleries, it's also known as NAG. So if you see NAG, that seems to be kind of the benchmark sculpt within the community that everybody kind of goes to. That's the bragging rights mask. And he's got a bunch of different versions. He's got original Kirk versions. I think he's got a Castle Stretch version. Maybe you want to collect all the Michael Myers masks. That's not really what I'm into. I only really want to collect the ones that I like, which are pretty much Halloween 1, 2, and the new David Gordon Greer trilogy masks. I really don't care for parts 4 through 7 or 8. It depends on how you're counting them. I don't care for most of those masks, so I'm not going to go out of my way to own them. I'm not a completionist. I don't have to have all of the Michael Myers masks. I just want the ones that I like. So my collection is rather small. And it's constantly changing out, but it's always kind of focusing on 78, 81, and then I have a 2018 back here that you can't see. But let's see here. I mean, as far as screen accuracy goes, if you're getting into the hobby and you're looking for a perfect screen accurate mask, you are likely not going to find one. And I would actually doubt if you knew what a screen accurate mask really meant, I doubt you'd actually want one. If you find a mask for sale that you absolutely think looks amazing, it's probably not screen accurate. The real one, if you want to see what the real one looks like, Sean Clark has a video where he has Tommy Lee Wallace replicate the process for the original one using a Kirk 75 replica. And it's literally just spray painted white, eyes are cut out, and the hair is spray painted black. That's it. There's really not any nuanced detail, and that's because 50% of the screen accuracy of the original Halloween masks had to do with the lighting. It didn't have to do with what the mask actually looked like in real life. The screen accuracy means exactly that, how it looked on screen. And the lighting was 50% of that look. So when you're seeing the masks that have the dark cheek shadows in here, none of that's actually on the real mask. That's all a result of the way it was lit, and the light catching those shadows. When you're buying a rehauled mask, that's not what you're buying. You're buying somebody's interpretation of how they see Michael Myers. And a lot of people, you'd be surprised, see him very differently. Many people will tell you, this is the Boogeyman Trick or Treat Studios mask. This is probably the closest in the mass produced, that is closest to the original Kirk mask. So Trick or Treat Studios has the original Kirk 75 replica that people can convert. It's no longer being produced, so what's out there is out there. They have the Boogeyman, that's what this one is. The previously known as the Elrod Halloween 2 mask. And it's really just an excuse for them to be able to make a Halloween 1 mask because they didn't have a license for it yet. So the Elrod, if you see Elrod and Boogeyman, they are the same mask. I believe it's also the same mold that they used for the H2 Ben Tramer mask. I'm pretty sure that's also the same mold here. And this has been disputed. I've had people tell me I'm wrong on this, but I actually believe that the Boogeyman, the Ben Tramer, the Elrod, I believe they are all the exact same sculpt as the Todd's Kirk 75. I could be wrong, but there's too many tells on it that tell me that I'm probably actually right, because that's why the Boogeyman mask always has really bad looking eye cuts, is because they're taking the Kirk mold and cutting out by hand those eye shapes. So a lot of times the Boogeyman mask shows up and it's not correct. Also, it doesn't have glue lines molded in, and that's because on the Kirk mask they actually have real sideburns glued there using actual glue, so they don't need a molded glue line. So I believe that's why the Boogeyman doesn't have a glue line. But and I could be mistaken, but it seems to make too much sense. So you can find me in the comments. I'm not too good to admit that I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're the same stuff. This one is the 78. This one is a little different. This one's not a replica of the original Captain Kirk mask. This one is the Captain Kirk mask plus Nick Castle's head inside of it, stretching it the way it's stretched to give it that look. So if somebody with a smaller head is wearing the Boogeyman mask, which can stand in for a 78, the Boogeyman really can be a 78 or it can be an H2. This one obviously has an H2 paint job, but this actually makes a great 78 as well if it's done correctly. But some people will swear that this is the better looking of the two sculpts, and some people see this one and it's like, oh, that's Michael Myers at the top of the staircase. That's the Myers that is burned into a lot of people's heads. A lot of people were affected by the closet scene, which Tommy Lee Wallace wore the mask in that scene, and his head stretched the mask differently than Nick Castle's did. He had a smaller head, so it stayed more in that original Kirk form for when he's busting through the closet. So some people, that's the Michael Myers they have burned into their head. So this is the one that they prefer. And it's, none of them are right, none of them are wrong. But effectively, when you're buying a rehauled mask, you're buying someone's interpretation of how Michael Myers looks to them. And if you're thinking about getting into rehauling, you need to take that into consideration. That I wouldn't say there's one go-to artist that is going to give you the mask that you want. some people are focusing on different details. Some people are seeing it differently than you. Some people are seeing the weathering differently. Because of how much lighting plays into it, it causes your brain to interpret that information differently. So effectively, you are buying someone else's point of view. You're buying somebody else's perspective. And if your perspective aligns with theirs, that's the mask you should buy. So it's hard to say, oh, this one's exactly right, or this one. It's all kind of up for debate. If you are getting into rehauling, I would recommend the first video that I looked at was the Nightmare Toys Perfect 78. It's a 2-part video. It's really good if you're a beginner. If you don't have everything you need, it takes time to build up tools, airbrushes. So there's things that you're going to want to invest in if you're wanting to go that route. And it's not easy. You basically plan on screwing up a few masks before you start getting it right. I actually, when I first started, I got a 78, and I actually rehauled it probably 3 or 4 times until it couldn't be rehauled. I got it as good as I thought I could, and then I had learned enough in doing those 4 do-overs that I felt more confident going into the next one and trying to get it right the first time. If you're looking for more advanced, if you've been rehauling and you're kind of already maybe moving past that beginner level, I would look at Nick Molpagano's videos. He has a YouTube channel. It's just called Nick Molpagano. He has handyboy.com, and you can purchase rehaul videos from him. They're not expensive. I bought one of his. It was like $20. More than anything, because I think I had the tools and the materials down before I really looked at anything he put out. But more what I picked up from Nick was the nuances, the details, like the things that I guess I didn't really assume were as important as they are for making the mask look the way you want it to look. There's a lot of little details that can make or break your mask. And it's those small details that really kind of invoke that, oh my God, it's him reaction when somebody looks at the mask. So I would highly recommend that. It's definitely money well spent. There's really not anything I can contribute as far as like rehaul knowledge. There's nothing that I could really put in a video that hasn't already been put out there. So I would definitely check out, just different people's methods of doing it. The way I do this is completely different than the way I do the H2. The H2 I do not use an airbrush at all, except for at the very end I kind of do some kind of burn effects here and there with the airbrush, but otherwise this is all done basically dabbing the paint on to give it like this kind of textured early stage deterioration look. That the 78, you're not going to want that. You're going to want the 78 to look relatively smooth. My 78s do have a very light texture. I achieved that by thinning down my white coat and then overspraying it through the airbrush and then dabbing it off with linen napkins. So I'm dabbing it off, and as you dab it off, the latex gives it like a real light texture. It's not enough that you really notice it unless you look real close. Let me see if I can focus on this. But you can see it's not a perfect sheen. It's just a very, very, very light texture on the way I do them. And some people don't see it that way. Some people do them in more of a high gloss. Again, you're buying someone's interpretation of a Michael Myers mask. And that's how I interpret it. And plus the light texture kind of picks up the weathering a little bit better and helps some of that really sit into the paintwork. Let's see here, and there's a ton of indie sculptors out there. There's a lot of really great sculpts by a lot of different artists. Nick Molpagano also has a couple of his own sculpts that he sells. He's got the 13 mask, which I eventually want to get my hands on one of those. And then let's see here. If you are looking the H2 route, I would want to mention real quick, you're really going to want to look at like a boogeyman sculpt. Trick or Treat Studios does have H2 masks, although they have been discontinued. They announced a couple of days ago. So basically whatever is produced right now is what's available. So if you really want to get your hands on one of their H2 masks, I would say do that now or forever hold the peace. But in my opinion, if you really want a good looking H2, you're going to want to look at a rehauled Boogeyman. The Boogeyman mask makes a far better H2 than the actual H2 sculpt. The Halloween 3 is also being discontinued. Let's see here. Now, let's talk about displaying masks. Two things before I get into the actual display element. Two things I want you to notice is the way that these masks currently look. Part of the looks of the way these are displayed have to do with how the mask is stuffed. This one is stuffed to look like Nick Castle's head wearing it, in addition to being Nick Castle's head as part of the sculpt. But if you just put a mask on a display stand without stuffing it out to compensate for the person's head, it's going to actually fall thin and it's not going to have that right shape that you're going to want it to have. This one stretched out a little bit further. This one is more in line with Dick Warlock's head rather than Nick Castle's. He was the actor that played him in part 2. And I didn't go full Warlock on this. This isn't even really a true H2. This was sort of my interpretation of like a best of Michael Myers. So there's certain little elements of the 78 in here. It's obviously mostly H2, but I even drew some inspiration from the H4 movie poster. So this one's meant to be like my ultimate Michael Myers. And again, it's mostly H2, but it's meant to be a little bit better than that. But as far as stuffing, I want to show kind of what I'm talking about. So we're going to point the camera down this direction. Alright, so take a look at the mask. Let me see if I can get it centered on screen. Take a look at the mask right now. Okay. Now watch what happens when I remove the stuffing. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about here. It almost looks like a different sculpt when you pull all the stuffing out. Now look at it. See that? His face all of a sudden got much skinnier, and honestly, if you pull down just a little bit, you kind of get that castle look, pull down right on the neck there. So if you want to take a Boogeyman mask and stuff it differently, you can get close to the castle sculpt with the Boogeyman sculpt, just by putting a little stuffing under the chin to pull it down just a little bit. And obviously the hair would be different if it were 78. But that stuffing is huge, so when you're displaying your mask, make sure you're doing that. And there are a couple different ways to display your masks, and I'll show you that here. If we'll put the camera back up real quick. If you look over here, I've got my Scooby-Doo creeper mask. This is literally, when you see YouTube videos where somebody's got like 50 masks in the background on shelves, 99% of the time they're sitting on paper towel stands. So the stand is $1.25 at Dollar General. The roll of paper towel is $1.25 at Dollar General. So this whole contraption, you're going to be into it for $2.50. So if you have a whole bunch of masks that you want to display, and there's ways to cover up the white. If you look over to that one, that's also a paper towel stand. I've just wrapped it in black plastic, so that gives you a blackout effect on the eyes, and you can literally just drop your mask on there and it's good to go. There's also, if you're looking to spend a little bit more money, if you're like me and you're keeping your collection relatively small, and trying not to go too crazy with it, because I got enough collections going on. I do not need another one, nor would I have room for another collection. I'd have to get a bigger place. But I work on my masks on this. You probably noticed that this head was sitting on a pole. All this is, it's a Walmart, one of those Walmart $20 standing lamps, and it's just, all I do is took out the electronic elements and then disconnected it halfway. And then this is sitting on a foam head, wrapped in plastic, and so when I'm working on the masks, I just drop it right on there, and that works great. But if you wanted to, you could also use this as a slightly nicer display. If you want to go above and beyond the paper towel stand, you can actually disconnect this thing all the way down to the lowest point here. Give me moments. And then you can just take and stick a foam head right on there. And then you've got a much heavier base. You can set that on a shelf. If you wanted to, you could actually cut the pipe down a little bit further, or you could drill out the styrofoam so that the styrofoam head sits further down on the stand. And this would make a really great display stand. So you'd be into it for like 20, 25 bucks. Just cut out the Walmart lamp and there you go. You got a stand. It's a little bit more expensive than the paper towel option, but gets the job done if you want something a little nicer looking. Plus it elevates your mask off the base a little bit. A lot of times when you put these on here, the bottom of the mask will actually be touching the display stand, which I don't care for. I like to have a little space there. And when you are using a styrofoam head, make sure that you are wrapping the head in plastic. I use these black grocery store bags. You can see this is the stuffing from this one. When you pull the plastic bags out, the head all of a sudden gets a lot skinnier. So when you're getting your mask, make sure that you're taking it, if you are using a foam head or if you're using a paper towel roll, you're still gonna have to stuff it either way. You'll have, whether you're using the head or the paper towel roll, will change how much stuffing you have to use. But usually you can just stuff a few bags on either side of the face here. When you first get the stuffing in there, the head will be just a little bit fatter than you want it to be usually, but you can usually just kind of push it down and the bags will take its shape and you're back to where you want it to be. The last thing I want to talk about, let's put that back there. Last thing I want to talk about is lighting. Lighting your mask, because when you have it on display, even though we have the nice paint job that makes it look like it's lit when it's not, you're still going to have to worry to compete with lighting on your actual display. So depending on how bright your light is, how far away your light is, that's all going to change. You can see when I lower it, it gets a little bit less intense on the mask, but then when I get it closer to the light source, you're catching a little glare on the forehead. Depends on how you want to light it. In fact, I'm actually going to turn on an LED ring and just kind of show you a couple of things real quick here. Let's see here. Where's my power button? Oh, there it is. There we go. There's my LED ring. So let's turn off the overhead light here. Alright, so I've got it on its highest intensity right here, and you can see it's pretty washed out when you're looking at it. It doesn't look quite that washed out in person, but it still looks pretty washed out. But I can change I can use this to change the brightness of it. Or, again, you got to check your brightness versus how far away the light is from the mask, because that'll change. So we're on the same brightness here. I hold it 3 feet above the head. You're getting a different lighting effect than you would be if it was right on it. And I also have a few color options on here. So, the more ambient yellow traditional tone, that changes it too. There's a little bit brighter. Honestly, right about maybe there is about what I think looks best. And I like to light it off to the left-hand side of Mike's face. It looks fine over here too. And there's your infamous Mariah Carey shot right there. But I like to be just a little bit off to one side, a little bit dim, put some decent space between the light and the mask. That's kind of where I like to be. I think that about covers everything I really wanted to talk about. Like most of my YouTube videos, I tend to not make them unless I have some type of contribution I think I can make. If I don't think I can make a contribution, I don't bother making a video, because if it's been covered to death, why bother? I'm not a YouTuber, I don't need the clicks. So I hope some of this helped. If you are interested in this mask is still available. This mask is going off to Elizabeth, who just purchased this one. We'll be putting that in a box tomorrow morning. And we'll be sending that off to her. But if you're interested in this one, you can go ahead and contact me, or if you just want to contact me and see if I have anything else available at any given time. I'm kind of always working on these. I don't really do commissions. Not to say I never would. My masks tend to sit around the $325 mark. And if you want me to do less, I can certainly do less and work something out that way. But typically, if I had a list of commissions to knock out, what would end up happening is I'd have a bunch of people mad at me in 6 months. So I tend to kind of just make a mask, sell a mask, make a mask, sell a mask. Yeah, any other questions, throw them in the comments. Otherwise, have a good night, and I appreciate your time.